Yay.
Hey, darling.
Hey, how's it going?
Really good. How are you?
Good. So, I'm Lauren and I'm the founder of Vibrant Market, which is a clean beauty and wellness store in New Orleans. And this is my really good friend, Ben. And today we're going to talk about relationships and just see what else comes up. But Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to and um, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. My name is Ben Paneccasio. I originally from Sydney, Australia, and been traveling the world for a while now since I was like 16. I played soccer for a long time, and so soccer took me around the world. Lived in England for a bit, lived in Scotland, and then came to America and went to college in America. And when I was done with college, I my bachelor's in exercise science and my master's in business, and then decided to go down the path of being a performance specialist, specifically working with soccer teams. And so all things physical body, nutrition, the mental side of things. And it was around this time that I started to kind of shift my focus from external to internal. I just started to notice that within my own life experience, there were certain things that weren't really adding up, you know. And one of those things was, so Lauren, if I was to ask you a question, like, would you rather feel happy or sad,
Happy,
right? Would you rather feel like blissful or frustrated?
blissful.
Every time, right? And so these are questions that like I started asking myself, and I just started noticing like the contrast. I started noticing experiences where I wasn't happy and I wasn't blissful, but I was the other two things, right? And I just knew that that's wasn't how I wanted to be. It's not how I wanted to feel. And so I started asking questions, and that led me on an internal journey. And so um, from there, I just started picking up practices and started attracting things into my life. One of the things I attracted into my life was a lovely woman by the name of Kat, who you know, and very blessed to have attracted her. And then now, about 2 years ago, we decided to quit our jobs and just travel. And so for the last 2 years, we have been traveling the world together, mostly living out of a car or living with other people, like couch surfing and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's a decent synopsis of my life.
Yeah. So, what about what you've been up to, like something that you started lately doing? You've kind of started have help, like kind of counseling. Would you call it counseling?
Yeah,
Talk.
it's an interesting thing. I mean, you could define it however you want, and people's perspectives will take them down whatever road they want based on that definition, right? Whether it's counseling or life coaching or self-help or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, something I started to realize was that once I stepped away from what would be considered as my job and kind of stepped into the world of, let's see what I attract and let's see what I truly do love, not based off money, not based off receiving anything back, but like, what do I truly love to do? And what I've realized over the past 2 years is that I'm consistently attracted to creating a space of unconditional love for people. Something I've realized is people find it so easy to open up in a space of unconditional love because it's not a space that they're really used to, you know? And when I say it's not a space that they're used to, yes, for most of us, we have people that express that they unconditionally love us, like our parents and our siblings and stuff like that. But it's based on the moment, right? And so some moments they're very judgmental of you, and other moments they're very loving of you. Now, this doesn't mean that their love is not unconditional. It just means that their ability to express it in each moment is not conscious. Sometimes they go into unconscious patterns, which makes them judge you. And so I find that in my life, I've been able to create a more consistent space of unconditional love for myself, which has allowed me to create that space for other people. And so a lot of people have just been attracted to that space. And so now I work with people that desire that space. And and we look to just discover more about themselves, discover more about, life and their perspectives, and and why they create certain things that they create, why they feel certain ways, why they say certain things, and look to discover how they really want to be and how they really want to live. And it's been really great. I really enjoy it.
That's really cool. Something
Yeah.
that I know that you really have a gift in is obviously talking to people, but making people feel comfortable, because you have a way of like communicating that doesn't that like either like strips down the trigger or doesn't make people feel like triggered or judged. And it's like
Hmm.
a real talent, and I'm working on it. It's a gift, so I'm not never going to get to your level, I don't think, but I'm really working on being able to like ask people questions. And that's something that you're really good at, is like, instead of saying, oh, like you feel this way, it's like you come up with a question to like get people there on their own.
Yeah.
And I think that's like such a gift in how you communicate with people and how you talk to them and how you help them.
Based off your comment, I have a question for you. So you said like levels, right? Like I don't think I'll ever get to your level, or so on and so forth. Do you actually feel that there are levels?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't. That was
Okay.
just
Cool.
something that I said. Yeah.
Sweet. And so, yeah, I would invite you to be open to the fact that it is a skill like any other skill,
Yeah.
right? And at first, it seems very challenging to create like a constant space of awareness, to be able to say the things you really want to say, to be able to come from a non-judgmental space. And if you're able to come from a non-judgmental space, then a lot of the things that you're saying are just solely your perspective with no attachment to this is right or wrong,
Yeah.
or it's a question, right? Or it's a question. And so I find that energy is so interesting, because I can enter a space and sometimes without even saying anything, just the fact that I'm unconditionally loving you and don't feel the need to say something sometimes makes people feel very welcomed. And like you said, by asking questions rather than just talking and saying things all the time and trying to, because I even think that at a point can be from a sense of knowing, like I know and you need to listen to me kind of thing, rather than I don't know. Like I honestly don't know. All I know is my experience. And if you would like to hear about my experience, I'd love to share it with you. But honestly, what I would love to do is hear about your
Yeah.
experience, right? And so I'm very curious about everyone's experience, knowing that my reality is my experience. So I only know that, right? A great question, Lauren, that I think I asked you like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, right? Is, can you think of anything outside of your own life experience?
Oh, yeah. No, I learned.
Right? Yeah, right. And so like people are very quick to say, yes, of course I can think of something outside of my own life experience. Like I can think of war, right? And I can think of people that fight in wars, but I've never fought in a war. Okay, but how do you know the concept of war? And how do you know that apparently people fight in these things called wars? Did you experience that somewhere? Right?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, you did. You experienced it in a book, or you experienced it in a class. Someone spoke it to you, right? And so this understanding that literally we cannot think of anything outside of our own experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which means that my perspective is so limited to my experience, right? And so to think that I know and to enter a conversation with the idea that I know not only gets the other person's wall up, because now they need to defend their perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because they think that their perspective is right as well, and I think mine is right, and so now we need to go to war. But by entering the space and realizing that I know nothing, I'm a learner in every space. All I want to do is learn, right? So tell me about you, kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of people really enjoy that space.
Yeah. You just have such a way of like seeing things and asking questions that I think is really cool. And it really, I mean, it really helps people like, like I was on the boat in Miami, I was standing there and I kind of just like, I was standing there with Kat. Well, cat was standing there, and I kind of just like floated on over, and she didn't even look at me, but she knew I was there, and she was like staring at the crowd, and she goes, in in cat's like gentle way, she goes, you know, it's really amazing. There's so many people that have come up to me and told me how Ben has changed their lives, and it's just like something that I experience every day. And I was like, he changed me and Tyler's lives, like for sure. He 100% did. And she was like, then she finally looked at me and she was like, that's really cool. I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah.
It's thank you for your love. I really appreciate it. And it can be quite overwhelming at times to hear things like that, you know, if I didn't truly understand what happened. And what I understand is happening is it has nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I come to this understanding that it has nothing to do with me is because I am not the deciding factor. And how I've come to realize this is if I was the deciding factor in changing other people's lives, right, then that would mean that no matter who I spoke to, it would change their life because I'm the deciding factor, right? But I'm not, because that's not how it works. The deciding factor is you. The deciding factor is the person. Are they open to the conversation? Are they able to allow what the conversation is holding for them, right?
Yeah.
Are they able to be 100% authentic? Or do they feel that they need to put on a mask when they're talking to me because they think I might judge them?
Mm-hmm.
And all these things have to do with that person and really nothing to do with me. I can create the space, right, of unconditional love. But if they don't want to step into that space, it doesn't matter what space I create,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so thank you for your love.
Thank you.
And I just want to let you know that it brings me so much joy, and I'm so grateful to have you and Tyler in my life, and to have those experiences like we did in Miami. It's just so great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
um, okay, so something that I kind of want to touch on about relationships is that something that I've noticed talking to a lot of people since I've taken off my backpack.
Yeah.
um, you know, and it's something I used to do. I'm sure I still do it now, but it's like in like society and just like life has put these like um like basically like rules around relationships saying that in a relationship I deserve this and I deserve that, and
Yeah.
like he, you know, he needs to spend more time with me because we're in a relationship, and that's not how relationships work. And like
Yeah.
things like that, like so many things like that that people like attach onto and then like let dictate their happiness in a relationship. And it's like, but that's how relationships work. And it's just really interesting to like listen and like to those things that I like 1200% just like felt like in my body in every single relationship that I've been in. And like,
Yeah.
so I kind of wanted to get like your opinion on those things.
For sure. And so I think this is something that we all have felt and will continue to feel throughout our life, right? And I think it's quite interesting to, you know, connect it back to our childhoods and stuff like that, our need for acceptance, right? With our parents and people around us, and how we would do certain things in order to gain that acceptance, right? And throughout that process of growing up, we also took on these things that we felt we felt that people could make us happy and that we could make other people happy. This is a belief that we grew up with, right? But if I'm to ask you, who is in charge of your happiness?
Me.
You are, right?
Yeah.
You're in charge of your happiness, right? And I'm in charge of mine, right? And everyone can come to that understanding, even what we're talking about before, right? Like, if I can't think of anything outside of my own experience and my perspective is based off my thoughts, right? Then what you're saying to me, I am perceiving. And so you could say the same thing to 100 people and they could perceive it differently. And so it is not what you're saying, but it is how I'm perceiving what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I am in control of my happiness, I'm in charge of it, right? That means I'm also in charge of the opposite of my happiness, right? And I'm in charge of my sadness and my frustration and all these things. But how much easier is it to say that, oh, no, no, it wasn't me, it was you? It's so much easier, dude,
Mhm.
right? Because then I don't have to look inwards. And I don't have to take on this challenge of like, but if it's me, like, why would I make myself angry? Like, I don't understand. Like, I wouldn't make myself angry. And it's like, well, it's very interesting. That's a cool question to ask. Why would you make yourself angry? Right? And this is something that in many relationships I was never able to understand, but through my experience of several relationships, came to a very cool understanding of how things have manifested in my life, right? And the best way I can explain it is in my past relationships, I was looking for acceptance, right? I didn't realize that I was worthy. I didn't realize that if I was me, I would attract the perfect person that loves me, right? And so I would go out into the world and I would put on different masks for different people. Because let's be honest, man, it's so easy to say what you want to hear. It's so easy for me to say what you want to hear, right? And then you can say, oh, yeah, you're right, and all this stuff, right? But it's very hard for me to say what I think is real. Because if I say what I think is real, now you have the option to judge it, not agree with it, or agree with it, right? And if I feel that my worth and my happiness and my sadness is dictated by how you perceive me, then how can I really be authentic around you?
Mhm.
Right? If I think that you being angry at me means that I did something wrong and it has nothing to do with your perception, it was me, then I'm never really going to say what I want to say around you. I'm always just going to say what I think you want to hear,
Yeah.
right? And so if I go through my life this way, right? If I go through my life saying what I think other people want to hear and never really being me, how can I attract someone that loves me and knows me? Because I'm never being me for long enough to attract that person,
Yeah.
right? And so I think just that simple understanding that you are worthy. And if you don't think you are, then that's why you feel that way. But secondly, if you want to create a world around you and you want to be surrounded by people around you that understand your worth, you need to take the mask off long enough
Yeah.
to attract the physical world around you that replicates that. Because what's happening is we're going out one day and we feel the worthiness, right? And we're like, I'm going to be me and I'm going to say what I want. And you say something to someone and they judge what you said. And then you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Mask back on. Let's just say whatever they want to say. But if you be you for long enough, if you understand your worth for long enough, and you realize that what other people say doesn't define you, then pretty soon you'll be surrounded by a world that knows you and loves you for you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah. That's something you and I talked about on the beach. And that just like obviously has to do with any sort of relationship and friendships. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it was something I was experiencing and it's something our friend was experiencing. And it was just like, we didn't keep, like, take our mask off long enough. And so
Yeah,
it just allowed, the cycle to keep happening.
pretty much. Yeah, it just reinforces itself time and time again.
It's really interesting. So,
Yeah.
in terms of like something that I think really I connected with that I learned recently is like, and I love the way you explain it, is that is allowing your partner and anyone in your life to have the freedom to do what they want to do. And just because they're doing that thing doesn't mean that they don't want to be with you. It just means that they want.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for instance, like if it's your best friend's birthday, but you know, Tyler really wants to go hunting because it's, the first weekend of duck hunting season and it's like cold and it's perfect and like his
Yeah.
going and he's going. Just because he wants to do that doesn't mean that he doesn't want to be with me or he doesn't like appreciate my best friend. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not getting what I deserve out of this relationship. It just means
Mm-hmm.
that he's has the freedom to go and do what he wants to do. And just because it's not about like he thinks that's more important, it's just what he wants to do. And I think that's
Yeah.
comes up a lot in relationships, um,
Yeah.
and marriages and all of the rest. And that's really interesting. And it, I don't know. Do you want to
It's
comment?
such a basic thing, right? It's such a basic thing. Like, so for example, like, do you desire free will?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right? It's like no one's like, no, 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 please control me, right? It's like everyone wants free will, right? But it's one thing to desire it for yourself, but it's another thing to allow it for everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we desire free will, and ultimately, do you desire that Tyler has free will as well?
Yes.
Cool.
Now I
At what point?
probably would have said no.
Right? And so the next question is, at what point do you not want him to have free will?
Yeah.
Right? And so then people start coming up with some crazy stuff, right? Well, I mean, I wouldn't want him to like go kiss someone else, or I wouldn't want him to go like sleep with someone else. But okay, we can go that far if you want to,
Yeah.
right? But if that's what he wants to do, then again, like, do you want him to have free will or not? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he does that, that doesn't change anything for you. Now you can perceive what he did and you can make a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this idea that no, 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 I'm going to control this person so they don't go do those things. So what you're saying is you want to be with someone who wants to go sleep with someone else, but you're going to control him so apparently he doesn't go do it. That's a very interesting perspective, right? Well, whatever it is, right? It's like this idea that they want to go do something. They want to go duck hunting. They want to go to dinner with a friend. You know, like my family's in town and I would like Kat to come to dinner with my family, right? And she has a friend in town and she wants to go see her friend. Her going to see her friend has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that she's saying, hey, Ben, I don't want to come with you. I want to go with my friend. No, no, no. She's just saying, I desire to go see my friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there doesn't have to be a competition here unless you create one,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, they have free will to follow their desires, just like I have free will to follow my desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I really desired to be with her, I could go to dinner with her and her friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? But no, I desire to be with my family. But in relationships, we have this thing that we grew up as a social norm, which is like, oh no, you need to compromise and sacrifice.
Yeah.
To have a successful relationship, you need to compromise and sacrifice. Let's visit those terms real quick, right? Compromise. Okay. Compromise. Partner A and partner B. Partner A has a desire. Partner B has a desire. Okay, let's not fulfill our desires. Let's meet somewhere in the middle where neither of us desire that thing. Let's just do that instead, right? It's like, what are we talking about here, man? Like them fulfilling their desire, should not that be the essence of a relationship?
Yeah.
Right? Like your openness, your love, you love them so deeply that you don't feel you need to put your perspective and your restriction on them. That's how much you love them. That you choose every day to be with them, not from a place of need, not from a place of without you, I wouldn't be enough. No, but from a place that I understand that love is within me and I'm choosing every day to be with you and to express that love with you. But in no way do I want to control you because I don't want to be controlled either.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. It's always a two-way street. It's just so much easier to it's so much easier to justify control when you're the one controlling someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And it's so interesting because like, so me and Tyler have gotten to this place in our relationship. The work will never end, but we feel like we've like kind of done it at this point. And
yeah,
to a certain extent, like so much more work, but we've gotten to this point where I feel like, and you never know because the universe always has a way of working itself out, and in the end, it's up to you.
hmm
But if I wouldn't have stayed with him, if we wouldn't have stayed together, and if we wouldn't have been together in a relationship, like we showed each other our triggers to the highest extent that I think a couple could. And
yeah,
we were each other's like biggest mirrors, and I don't think it's hard to see that if we didn't stay together, that we would have each individually gotten to the place where we are now. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting how people always say, and it's something I've kind of been thinking about recently, is like people have told me in the past, and you hear people say, well, relationships shouldn't be that hard. Like, you're working too hard.
Yeah.
Relationships shouldn't be that hard. And I don't think I've ever really been in a relationship like that. So it's interesting to me, like, what what that even means. And
Yeah.
maybe people are just super chill, and they don't, maybe they just give the other one the freedom to do whatever they want to do, or maybe one person's more controlling. I don't know. But in my experience, um,
Yeah.
we have kind of really mirrored each other to grow. And I think that if more people looked at relationships as, instead of like, oh, like they have a lot of trouble, like, you know, they shouldn't be together, or um, if they looked at that as like, wow, like this is a huge learning point and growth point for me, like,
Hmm.
you want to do that with me too?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this idea that the grass is greener somewhere else rather than, hey man, like let's cultivate this garden together,
Yeah,
right? Let's understand that like each of us have challenges within us, right? And if we all have challenges within us, then does it not make sense that the person that is supposed to create a loving space for me more than anyone else, we would not like create that loving space together and try to come to an understanding, not an understanding where like we understand each other, but an understanding like where I understand myself. Because
yeah,
if we can talk about this, and if I can truly understand myself as a person, right, and express that to you, then I'm not going to judge you, right? I'm not going to create this space of resistance, and I think this is where most of the issues come from in a relationship, right? I was talking before about someone going and cheating on their partner and stuff like that, right? And that was a dramatic example, but I want to talk about things like this because that's what's going through people's heads,
yeah,
right? And I want to help them understand something very important, right? Very, very important. And I'll do it by asking you a question. So if I was to judge you, right, would you want to be around me?
no,
No, right? If I was to unconditionally love you, would you want to stay around me?
yes,
Of course you would, right? And so it's such a simple understanding,
yeah,
right? And how does that translate? All right, well, in relationships, you feel like you need to control
yeah,
based off fears of abandonment, based off all different types of fears, right? So then you control. And what does control mean? Control means I'm going to judge you. I'm going to judge what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're feeling. And if you're judging that person, they're not going to want to be around you, man.
mm-hmm.
Just like you wouldn't want to be around anyone that was judging you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And so it's not about like, well, let's come together and figure out how we can like come to a compromise where we judge each other like on like just a little bit. It's like, no, man, like let's come from a place of understanding and non-judgment where I love you and you love me. And isn't it interesting how for the first like month or 2 months of every relationship, that's what was experienced,
yeah,
right? It's like, okay, yeah, do whatever you want, man. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to like that honeymoon period, right? And that's all it requires. And it's not that it's not challenging. Yeah, man, it is challenging to overcome your own fears and to understand that love is within you and it isn't held by that person. So whether they stay or whether they leave, you're going to be okay. Like that's challenging to get to that point. But your other choice is to judge and control the one person that you're supposed to love the most in this world based on social norms.
yeah. It's really interesting. That was something that I remember when you came over for dinner that we talked about. I don't remember how it came up, but you were like, if yeah, about the cheating thing. And if they do cheat and you're unconditionally love them, then know that like it has nothing to do with you. right?
Yeah, it literally has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's hard for people to hear, though. What do
Yeah.
you mean? They cheated on me. It's like,
And
no,
they
no,
don't
no. No, they didn't.
care with me. They're like,
Yeah, right. It's yeah. It's like, dude, like at the end of the point, at the end of the day, right? Like, people are gonna do what they want to do eventually, right? It's gonna happen, and it's just whether you allow it or not. And the funniest thing about it is that your fear is what is driving them away.
yeah.
That's why they're going somewhere else. It's not you, right? It's not you. It's the space that is created of judgment.
Hmm.
That's it. That's all it is. Now, whether you're judging them or someone else judging them, it doesn't matter. Now, what's really important to understand, well, I'm judging them, so how is it not me? Awesome. Perfect. Great question. Right? So, just like we started off this conversation, who is in charge of your happiness and your sadness? You are, right? So, when you judge your partner, it is not your judgment that makes them feel bad. It is their perception of your judgment. For example, if a stranger was to walk up to you and say, I don't love you, right? Most people are going to be like, all right, cool, dude. Yeah, all right, thanks, man, and keep walking, right? But if your husband or your wife or your partner comes up to you and says, I don't love you, right? Why is this different? Why is it different? Well, because the way I perceive it is different. And now the way I perceive it is that my love is with you. Now you don't love me anymore. And so now I'm going to feel like what it's like to be unloved. So your perception is that you are not loved anymore, right? When again, really, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening, right? And if you feel that way, right? If you feel that way, then you will feel what it is like. But just like everyone's experiences, after a breakup, whatever it is, at first you feel the emotion of being unloved, right? And being lonely. But with time, everyone gets back to where they were and, oh, I'm okay now. Everything's okay, right? And you replace it with one of two things. You replace it with external love again, right? And you go look for another person that can tell you that they love you, so now you feel loved. Or eventually you go through that cycle enough where you realize that, oh, wait a second, my love was never within that person. I had it within me and I chose to give it away and give it away and give it away time and time again. I chose to give it away to my girlfriend. I chose to give it away to my mom. And every time those people judged me, I felt it. But if Kat judges me now, right? If Kat says something to me that people would perceive as hurtful, it can't hurt me unless I make it personal,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't see love as a physical thing. And if you do, then I understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You know, like if you feel that love is an action, like, oh, well, he bought me flowers, so it must mean he loves me, right? Or he said he loves me, so it must mean he loves me, right? Or any physical action. If you think physical equals love, then you're going to be riding this roller coaster of love and unloved, that feeling, for the rest of your life.
All,
But yeah, yeah, it's like, it, and it just kind of clicked one day for me. It's like, wait a second, I love you, right? I love you. And I don't understand how when I do certain things, you think I don't. And when I do other things, you think I do. Because within me, my love for you hasn't changed. So I don't understand why you keep telling me that I love you now and now I don't love you. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
hmm
If you think that, it's unfortunate. You will feel that. But my love for you hasn't changed.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. When like you're in any sort of relationship again, friendship, uh, or partner, and you judge them, something I've really noticed, it's not really, it's like you're always judging yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time. And it's like,
It's just an external expression of your judgment to yourself.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I especially notice that in my like in my family, like when I get so triggered by my family and I'm like, now notice, like, it takes a second to think about it, but when I'm getting like annoyed or I'm judging them or I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what is this? It's not
Yeah,
me judging them, it's me judging myself. Like me, like how do I perceive that and how does it make me look? Or
correct. If you didn't think there was a right way,
yeah,
then you couldn't judge them based off what you think is the wrong way.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And so that exact same scenario in your life that you judge your family for, you judge yourself for. You just do it in a way that you found to not judge yourself as much because, oh, this is the right way, so I do it the right way.
mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. It, it's all like it's just a constant learning process, and when something that Abraham Hicks was talking about when I was listening
Mhm.
to one of her talks with Kat was like, or maybe it was Anthony DeMello. Anyway, he was like, the problem in everyone's life is attachment and opinions, judgments,
Mhm.
attachments, and maybe there was one other thing. So like in a relationship, if you have some sort of like, or in expectations, it's like
Mhm.
expectations is such a big one in a relationship because you go into this, and that's what like society kind of ingrains in your mind. If you have like all of these expectations, what I need in a partner, this is what I expect
Yes.
to do, it's just like a recipe for disaster because no one's
Mhm.
ever gonna fulfill your expectations perfectly, and you're not gonna fulfill theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's all you, right? And so, like, not only are you going to feel it when you don't fulfill your own expectations, right? And you judge yourself all day, but you're going to project those expectations on the people closest to you, right? All the time. And so it's just such it's just such an interesting space to create for one another, knowing that it's supposed to be a loving space, right? It's like the opposite of a loving space, right? And it's just it's very interesting to observe my past self and how I used to create what I thought was a loving space, and now observe myself in the present and see what that same space, that same loving space looks like, right? Um, Something I would really look to express to people is that look within you, like look within you, like it's so easy to look externally and look at your partner and look at any relationship and blame it on them, right? They made me feel this way. They made me do this. What they said was not nice and all this, right? But you're removing the determining factor that is making you feel that way. And that is you. You are making you feel that way about what that person said, right? And so if you can start to create a space of awareness within yourself, then very quickly, what was first assumed as an external disturbance starts to be realized for what it really is, which is an internal disturbance. And once you can find the source of that disturbance, then you can change the frequency and you can turn it down or you can turn it up, right? But there is no longer this sense of non-control, like, oh, I don't control it because they're the ones that made me upset. No, 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 you do control it. And once you can start to look internally and find the controls, then a space of love becomes easier to create because you're in charge of the space that you create. And that's all you're in charge of. You're not in charge of what that person says. You're not in charge of what that person does. And if you try to take charge of that, your life is going to be like a roller coaster, ups and downs every single time. Because you're telling yourself, when they do this, I'm going to be happy. But if you've given your happiness to that, then understand you've also given your unhappiness to the opposite of that. And so you will feel both.
So I think a question some people might have is like, like when there's some sort of like disagreement and you feel like you're giving your happiness away, like what's the difference between just kind of like, I think something I used to ask you is like, well, I feel like I'm getting like stomped all over and I just let them do whatever they want,
Yeah.
pretend like it doesn't affect me.
Cool. And so I think something that needs to be realized as well is like you always have a choice. Like we all have choices, right? And sometimes we tell ourselves that we don't. Like, oh, I'm not gonna leave, right? Or I have to stay, or whatever it is, whatever imaginary thing we're telling ourselves that makes us think that we don't have a choice, right? But you always have a choice. You have a choice to leave the conversation. You have a choice to leave the space with that person, right? Short term, long term. You have the choice to do whatever you want, right? But even that feeling of being trampled on, where is that feeling coming from? Right? And so, like, what I've realized, like, very quickly, right, is that as soon as you don't give the ego in the other person a competitor to fight against, kind of disappears, man, pretty quickly, right? Like, if Kat, for example, was to like judge me, right, and just like, let's say, just like be in like an egoic pattern where she's judging me, right? If I engage in that judgment, right, and so I take it personally, I feel it, and based off that feeling, now my ego thinks it needs to defend myself, and so then I engage. Now we're just like going to be trading blows verbally back and forth,
Yeah.
right? But if she judges me and I just look at her because I'm aware in that moment that she's not judging me, she's judging herself and she's expressing that to me, right? If I can be aware of that in the moment, the only thing I want to say to her is, I love you. And when you'd like to discuss this in a more relaxed manner, I'll be in the other room waiting for you.
Yeah.
And very quickly, like, a few things can happen. She can double down on the ego and be like, right?
Relax.
And I'm going to walk, right? Yeah. And I'm going to walk away into the other room, right? Regardless of what she doubles down on, right? Or she can turn around and be like, oh, all right. He said he loves me. So I just screamed in his face and he said he loves me. Oh, that's weird. I'm not used to that. And some people get shocked because the ego's not used to that, dude, right? The ego's used to competition, right? Like, I hate you. Why'd you say that for? Like, I love you though, right? It's like, no, I love you. I'll be in there. And so if you can come from that space of loving awareness, which is challenging, right? Then the ego doesn't have a competitor to fight against. And as soon as that happens, the situation de-escalates pretty quickly. And the more you can do that, the less that your spouse or your loved one or whoever you're communicating with, the less that they will want to engage because they're not being engaged with back. And so the whole purpose of their engagement is not supported by you.
Right.
You're not going to do it with them,
Yeah. Me and Tyler, I don't know, like a month or two ago, got in like this kind of huge blowout fight about, I don't even remember what it was. And we were both egoing back and forth. And I remember
Yeah.
like finally, I was like, we're both in our ego right now and we're not going to figure anything out because you're in your ego, you're yelling at me. And he was like, it totally took him back. And he was like, you're right. And we just got up bed and we were
Yeah.
fine because
I love
like
that, dude.
that situation, I'm like, are you ridiculous? I'm right. And he's like, are you ridiculous? I'm right. What don't you see?
Yeah.
Like he, and his thing is
Yeah.
like, say, I'm here, you're here. Like, look what I'm doing. And I
Yeah.
be like, judge him and call him a, you know what? And
Yeah,
that,
let's deconstruct that because I mean, I have that experience. I love that experience. So like, let's deconstruct that for the people listening, right? So what's happening is this, and we've used the word ego, right? And so for those of you that don't know, like the ego is your identification with your thoughts, right? And earlier in this conversation, we spoke about thoughts and where they come from. Your thoughts come from your experience. And so pretty much the ego is you identifying with your experience and saying that my experience is right. And if my experience is right, then all others are wrong, right? And so this is what happens a lot in relationships, right? Where it's like, no, it's this way. No, it's that way, right? And pretty much all that's happening is one person is saying, my experience and my thoughts are right. And the other person is saying, no, my experience and my thoughts are right. But understand, we could incorporate the rest of the world, 3 point something billion people. And they could also say, no, my experience and my thoughts are right. Right?
Right.
And so when you can bring awareness to the craziness that is that situation, right? You can bring awareness to it. The ego, again, has a choice. It can double down and you can say, guys, like, what is happening right now? Like, we understand that neither our perception is right. They're just perceptions, right? Or you can bring awareness to the other person like you did with Tyler, right? And I'm sure he's done with you, which is like, you can say, hey, do you realize that right now we're like arguing about our experiences and I'm saying that mine is right and yours is wrong? And they're like, oh yeah, that's kind of crazy. And it diffuses the whole situation, right? Because when you step back and you view it for what it is, what an interesting thing to argue about, you
Yeah.
know? Like, it's totally against unconditional love. It's totally against free will. It's totally against all these things that everyone desires in a relationship.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. That was like the seed of a lot of our arguments, is because like we experienced the same situation like two completely different ways.
Yeah.
And we would,
Yeah. A perfect example is like, all right, so let's say one person in a relationship grew up in a culture where death, someone dying, was celebrated, right? Someone else grows up in a culture where death is mourned, right? Like, at what point do we start arguing about this?
mm,
Like, oh, no, you should be sad right now. It's like, well, I don't understand. Like, I love this person. I experienced my whole life with this person. I'm rejoicing about this person's life. No, you shouldn't do that. It's like, that's pretty much what we're doing with everything. It's just, I experienced this, you experienced this. Let's grow off each other's experiences rather than try to make each other conform to one another's experiences, you know?
yeah, yeah. And to touch on this too, I wanted to bring up like something that I have struggled with and I'm still like struggling with is like people pleasing and like putting
Mm.
my mask on for everyone because I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. I want people to like me. But it comes to a certain point, especially I feel like in my experience in partnerships and relationships, that it comes to like a breaking point, and I'm like, I do all of this shit for you, and what do I get? And that's like
Yeah.
in two different ways, totally both
Mm-hmm.
ways, me being people pleasing and not doing what I want to do and doing what they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then me expecting something back from them, are both ways of
Yes.
not unconditionally loving them or myself. Because unconditional love means like, I'm going to give this, I don't care what you give in return because I love you no matter what. And I think a lot
Yes.
of people like they expect something back when they do something like it's Valentine's Day, I got you flowers. You didn't get me anything? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
You don't love me.
Yeah.
I love you more.
Yeah. And think about that, right? Think about the fact of how selfish that giving is,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not really giving, it's not really love. You're doing something with an expectation to receive something back. And so what you gave had a stipulation on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how is that really unconditional love? How is that really giving if you're requiring something back? And it doesn't matter what you require, right? Like, something that used to be experienced in many of my very young relationships, right, was like, I love you. What? You're not going to say it back? Like, why are you going to say it back? Right? It's like, what do you mean, dude? Like, did I say that so you would say back so that I would feel loved? Of course I did. That's exactly why I said it. Right? And how selfish is that, man? Because I'm not even saying it because I really want to express to you how much I love you. I just want to feel how much you love me. And we do this all the time, man. And don't see it. You know, we're not really aware of what we're doing. But again, anytime you're doing that, and you require something, you expect something, just understand what you're setting yourself up for. You're setting yourself up to feel the opposite of good. And so sometimes you will feel good when they meet your expectations. You'll be like, oh yeah, that felt good. But when they don't meet your expectations, you're going to feel bad every time. And neither way were any of those feelings real unless you perceived them to be real.
Hmm. It's hard. It's like, it definitely took a while for me for it to click. And I think like once it clicks with somebody, like they could hear it a million times, but again, like with you,
Yeah.
you have changed people's lives. They have to be open to it. They're not open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have to experience it. They have to experience it. Like, we can talk all we want right now, right? And there's people listening and stuff, but to them, it's just a concept. It's just a concept,
Mhm.
right? Because they've heard it and they're like, oh, okay. But if they haven't experienced it, then it's not reality to them at all, right? It's just a concept. And so these concepts are only made reality by the willingness and the faith within the person to step in to that experience and say, okay, well, I'm going to see what happens if I unconditionally love people for the next 100 days. Let's see what happens, dude, if I'm just going to unconditionally love everyone, right? And by stepping into that new experience, you're going to create new thoughts. And when you create new thoughts, you'll create new perspectives. And when you create new perspectives, you'll create a new personal reality. And that's how we start to get to a place where, people say, oh, to everyone, like, you've changed. You've changed. It's like, okay, cool. That's awesome. What am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, if I don't experience anything new, I'll never think of anything new. If I don't think of anything new, I'll never feel anything new. I mean, I'm here to explore life. I'm here to live life as a part of life. And so I think that the ability to take concepts and implement them in your life, not in a way of complete surrender to the point where you're like, oh, this is the right way. No, what I'm saying isn't the right way. It's not the wrong way. It's just our way. It's just my experience and what you've experienced, right? And it's just interesting to step into that world of other people's experiences and see how it feels for you. Because, from what I've realized, that it feels really good for a lot of people to unconditionally love others.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just does.
And I feel once you start to shift and it can be hard, which is something I talked to you about, going back into the world where like you feel different and it's the same people, but like,
Yeah.
and then you start to judge that and like judge other people and you feel like, well, I'm here, like, what do I do? And so that's something that, and then I'm like, okay, then I realize like, okay, I'm judging them
Mm-hmm.
because I'm here and like I feel different and this is weird. Um, so I feel like I don't know, that's something that I've definitely been like struggling with, like walking around in the world and feeling like I'm judging people because I'm like here and like I've become that.
Yeah, and it's a from what I've experienced, it's a normal process,
Yeah.
right? And it comes from, in that moment, a lack of understanding,
Yeah.
right? Because again, like, at one point in your life, you can understand exactly why that person is doing what they're doing, saying what they're saying, feeling what they're feeling, because you were the exact same person as them at one point in your life, right? But if we start to view this as levels, right? Like, oh, I'm here and this person's here.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the only thing judging, right? The ego's judging,
Yeah.
you're judging, right? And so in loving awareness in the moment, the ability to meet people in understanding, right? In empathy, not sympathy, in empathy, and to meet them in understanding is what allowed you to shift your perspective and step into a new reality. And it's the same thing that's going to allow them to do the same because, like we said earlier, no one wants to feel sad.
Totally.
No one wants to feel frustrated. No one wants to feel these things. And they're all looking to be able to find a perspective that allows them to feel love,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because down that path that you were saying, like, you start to notice yourself judging, and I notice the same things, right? It's interesting because, again, who's judging? We're judging ourselves, right? And and so I just consistently look to, as soon as I can, bring myself to awareness. And as soon as I can do that, then shift my perspective to what I desire to really shift it to, which is always a space of understanding. And I notice that when I do that, not only do I feel really, really good, um, but I'm able to enter that space with the other person and allow them to feel really good too,
Yeah.
rather than feeling judged.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also like, it's very easy in that situation to kind of just like distance yourself from like everybody, which is
Mm.
something that I've thought about too, is like, oh, you can just like remove yourself from all of the situations and just that's very easy, but it's like more uh work internally for you as that person to like stay and think like, okay, why does this situation bother me? Or like, why do I feel like I need to judge this situation? Like, what does that say about me? Like, yeah, because I think sometimes people can just be like, oh, okay, like, friendships can shift and relationships can shift, and you can just feel like, oh, well, I'm just not going to be friends with these people anymore because, like,
Hmm.
make me feel good. But, like, what doesn't make me feel good?
Yeah.
I'm not making myself feel good.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's, you can also look at it like the way, like we're talking about others, like you can also look at that yourself, right? And so it's like in that moment, if we're placing judgment on others,
Yeah.
right? And through judgment, we're not able to really like feel what truly wants to come through, right? Because it doesn't feel good. Then in that moment, if we judge ourselves for judging, then we're not able to really come to an understanding of where that came from
Yeah.
and where we're from, right? And so it's really nice to, and I'm sure you've felt that you've had that experience as well, right? Where it's like you are unconsciously judging someone, then you become aware of the fact that you were judging them, and then you judge yourself for judging them, which makes you go pretty much subconscious again in a way. And it's just like very hard to manage that space, right? And so something that I invite people to do is to understand that their feelings are probably one of the best indicators of where they should be guided to go. And what I mean by that is, so for a long time now, I've been using my emotions as guidance, right? Knowing that a thought is going to lead to an emotion, and knowing that I have many unconscious thoughts and many unconscious programming, it's very hard to become aware of the thought that I had that made me feel that way.
Hmm.
But it's really easy to become aware of the emotion because I physically feel the emotion, right? And so for me, emotions are like really great guidance for me to click myself in to awareness and to answer the question for me, really, because at the end of the day, if I'm feeling an emotion, I don't see it as different emotions. A lot of people are like, oh, but there's sadness and there's anger and there's frustration and there's all these different emotions. I don't view them as different emotions. I view it as one spectrum of emotion. So it's just like, imagine a spectrum, right? And it's just one spectrum of emotion, right? And what I truly feel, my aligned emotion of love is here. And the further away my perspective gets, the more I will feel the disruption, right? And so when I feel, let's just say bad, right? Or I feel what we label as frustration or anger, it just lets me know that I'm pretty far away from how I truly feel, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And so I just use my emotions as guidance to say, oh, okay, I feel that I'm feeling frustrated right now. Let me not try to change this. Because let me ask you a question. If this is how I truly feel, right, or how I truly desire to feel, and for some reason I'm over here, do I need to try and get it back? Or do I just need to allow this to disappear so that I come back?
You need to let it disappear. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I just need to allow it, right? And so that's what I've kind of been doing. I just kind of allow my feelings and I just observe them because I don't want to feel upset. Neither do you, neither does anyone else. So why do we? Because we have subconscious, unconscious programs that are running all day, most of the day. And so when we find ourselves in a situation where we're feeling angry, feeling depressed, it's because a program has run. And now this is the end result of that program. Because if I could consciously choose how to feel, I wouldn't be choosing anger. I wouldn't be choosing sadness.
Yeah.
So I didn't consciously choose that. And so all I need to do is allow it and view it for what it is. It's just a program. I didn't want to run it. It just ran by itself. So let me allow. And when I allow and I observe my feelings in my body. I observe the thoughts in my head, just like you do when you're meditating. I don't attach to them, because if I attach to them, then I become the ego again. Then I judge again, right? If I can just observe, then what you start to notice is it just disappears. Have you had the experience in meditation where you just observe your thoughts and they come in and they go, and they come in and they go, compared to the experience of a thought comes in and then you attach to the thought and then you go down that path of that thought, right? It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. If I can just observe everything that's going on within this moment of reacted subconscious programming, then it'll go through and it'll go on and it'll go away, and the feeling in my stomach and in my head and the thoughts will disappear, and I will come back to aligned.
Yeah. I have a million other things I want to add to that. It might kick us off.
I have nothing to do. I love this space.
it, it usually kicks off at an hour. So
Yeah, I know.
before it does, do you want to say anything like how people can reach you? Obviously, Ben and Cat travel or anything else?
Yeah. Um, I love creating this space. You've been a witness to this space. And so if you enjoy this space and you would like to create it with me, just just message me. benandcat.travel, and let's have a chat and see where it goes.
Yeah. So one thing before it kicks us off, just to add to your thought, now that you've said that, is that I don't remember where I heard this, but the other day someone was saying how, when you have a negative experience or negative emotion, there's like a few things that you don't, that, that will make it worse. And like basically the answer is to do what you said and kind of just like watch it and like let it go away. Like don't necessarily, there's like repression, which is like you unconsciously repress it. You
Yeah.
unconsciously like, turn on a distraction. And maybe another one was distraction, like TV, internet, people. You suppress it, which is like consciously pushing it down. And then you talk about it, which a lot of people say that talking about it, could be a good thing. And it could be in like small respects, but a lot of people, if you over talk about it, you like embody it more, and you like it
Mm-hmm.
turns like complaining and like identifying with that emotion. So it almost like makes it more true than
Mm-hmm.
it is. And like I think like when you talk to you about it, it's different because it's not like I'm talking about it, I'm complaining, I'm complaining, I'm complaining. It's like figuring out where it's coming from, and like
Yeah.
basically the answer always is, and the journey to get there is important, but the answer always is like it's here. It's not there or there.
Yes.
Always it's here, but it's
Yes.
like the journey how to get there is um very important.
Yeah. The way I see my conversations with people is I'm just reflecting back to you. I'm just a mirror that is reflecting back to you the things that continue to hide from you. Right. I'm just putting the mirror in the corners that you sometimes find it hard to find things in. Right. And so I'm not telling you what you should do or how you should do it or how you should feel. I'm just reflecting back to you what you're already feeling so we can deeper understand it. So you can deeper understand it. And actually have the choice within your life is, do you really want to feel that way? Do you really want to think those things? And how can you step forward in the week to come and experience new things to create a new reality for yourself?
Yeah, and like watch how you're creating those negative spaces. So something that I've like realized is like, oh, when I start to feel negative, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, how did?
Yeah. You almost like laugh at yourself. You just get to the point where you just keep laughing at yourself
Yeah,
because it's like yeah, right. You get to the point where you can like view these unconscious thoughts and you're just like, oh my God, that is hilarious, dude. Like, why would I ever think that?
yeah,
It's just funny, man. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. I laugh like in public all the time. Like I'll be walking the dogs and I'll like think about something that's pissing me off and then I'll just laugh.
It's the best, dude. It's so funny. Imagine that concept, laughing at yourself rather than judging yourself. It just creates a space that allows for growth,
Yeah.
right? Rather than judging yourself, it just really shuts you down and shuts you off from really learning anything. And to go off what you said again, like this whole idea that there is a good and a bad experience, that's what doesn't allow us to really learn from the experience because there is no good and bad experience. It's our perception of the experience. Just like I spoke about before with, the perception of death, and some people view it as liberating, other people view it as like sad.
Right.
Whatever it is, it's our perception. And if we can come from that space where, wait a second, the only reason I'm feeling this way is because I perceive something that is making me feel this way. Okay, what are the infinite other perceptions that are going to make me feel something different? Let's explore those and let's see if any of those I resonate with and they make me feel good. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say thank you for this space. Thank you for creating it. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. I really enjoyed this and I love you deeply. Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you for being willing to, chat, and I'd love to do it again in this space. Um,
Yeah. Anytime.
and thank you for being you. Really so glad to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diego.
Thank you, Diego. Oh, thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone has anything that they want us to talk about on a future
Yeah.
chat, please just message Lauren or message myself, and we can dig deeper into things that you really want us to dig deeper into.
Yeah. Endless amounts of things.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Love you, Joanna. Do you see? She commented.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much. What else am I looking at? Oh, wow. Very cool. Hey, Anne. Thank you, darling.
Uh-oh.
That's very nice of you. Well, this is cool.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Oh,
I love you, Ben. Tell Kat I said
love you,
I
darling.
love her too.
I will. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Mhm.